morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We are the Most Travel team. So first, please allow us to introduce ourselves, and we'll start from Austin, who brought up this great idea.
Hello, everybody. I'm Austin Gabarkowitz. I'm an 8-year Army veteran. I came up with this idea in about a week. I'm traveling to Europe and had this huge problem of having 50 different windows open to make an itinerary to try to get everything organized. So this is kind of like a good idea that I had afterwards. So basically what I did for this project was I worked on the React components that dealt with hotel, flight, and ChatGPT API retrieval, displaying that information, and then saving the user information to the backend.
Hi, my name is Kasib Abdullah. I am an Army veteran, and I was responsible for implementing the user authentication on the back end and front end, error handling the forms, styling the front end, and serving as a DevOps role to include Dockerizing our application and then deploying it through Amazon Web Services.
Hey everybody, I'm Sean Madden. I'm a currently serving Army National Guard soldier for the state of Indiana. Prior to that, I served in the state of Tennessee. My primary contribution to the project was implementing the rental car feature for making an itinerary, and that was through the Avis budget group. And yeah.
Hi, my name is Hui. I am a Army veteran spouse, and for this project, I'm responsible for the backend functionality and the front-end web design. So move on to, oops, sorry. All right, so Most Travel is aiming to provide our users with worry-free itinerary generating function compared to our to the other bigger apps like TripAdvisor. Most Travel is easier to navigate and mainly focus on generating detailed itinerary. So for our app, we have three main features. So the app can generate personalized itinerary based on travelers' preference on hotels, flights, rental cars, and what they would like to explore as destinations. So user can also ask our AI assistant for all kinds of travel questions. Also, with the simplified UI UX design, it will help our users to generate itinerary faster. And from now, I will hand it to my teammate Austin to show you our Most Travel app and demonstrate how it works.
Great, thank you, Hui. So basically, it's pretty simple. It takes in the user to a homepage, and then they have the option of inputting what they would like. So either hotels, flight information, rental cars, or any other specific location. We then run that data through several APIs, and then after that's all packaged, we send it off to ChatGPT to get an exact itinerary, and then that is displayed and generated and saved under the user's account. So we'll move on to the demo. Okay, so we use token authentication to create user accounts. So for right now, we're going to go ahead and create this Josh account and sign in to create an itinerary. The token pretty much keeps any user, out of any other external URL and allows them to save information to their profile. So we're going to go ahead and create an itinerary and just call it Josh's trip. And so from here, you can choose airplanes, hotels, rental cars, or specific activities. So we'll walk through each one. And for flights, you can choose either direct flights, round trip flights, or multi-trip. So multi-trip is basically a conglomeration of direct flights. So we'll go from Atlanta to Chicago, and then we'll go from Chicago to Sydney, and then from Sydney back to Atlanta. This is basically taking all of your information and sending it to the Amadeus API to retrieve the cheapest flight possible for you. And then we also do auto loading for searching, and that's from the Google Maps API. So that way we grab the IATA code of the airport that you're trying to fly out from, and then it'll bring in all the flights from there. So we'll go ahead and search that. So here we have a list of all the different trips, their prices, the legs of the trip, so any layovers are incorporated in that as well. And it'll go through, like I said, from cheapest to most expensive. So we'll go ahead and pick that first one just because it's the cheapest, and then it'll display hotels. So, we'll stay at Chicago and we'll stay in Sydney. And this is also using the Amadeus API. And basically we're looking at a location. So we're taking in the IATA code and then searching within a radius of there. So we set it to 1 kilometer just so it retrieves data faster, but it's very simple to expand that. And then we'll search. So we only have one airport in Sydney, so we'll go ahead and check that off and then select the hotel for Chicago. And at the bottom, all your airports are selected, or all your hotels are selected. And then we'll move on to rental cars. So we'll do a rental car in Chicago. And again, we're using the Google Maps for autocomplete here. And then we're also using the avis API to display from either avis budget or pay less, but we'll choose avis for right now. And we'll drop it off back in Chicago when we're done. And this API will give you the image of the vehicles and the cost of the vehicles, for your trip. So we'll select the Toyota Corolla. And here you can choose specific places you want to visit. If you don't know, you can always use our chat at the bottom. This utilizes ChatGPT with the prompt of being a travel guide of 20 years. So it won't respond to you for anything like math or existential crisis questions. It pretty much strictly relies on travel. So we'll ask it where some sites to see in Chicago. So we'll get the Navy Pier, the Willis Tower, the Lincoln Park Zoo. So we'll go with the Navy Pier. And here it's using Google Places to predict what you're trying to type. You can remove it if you realize it's not a place you want to go to, or you selected something incorrectly. And so we'll do the being in Chicago as well. And as you can see, you can type in things that are slightly incorrect and it'll still predict what you're trying to say. So the Sydney Opera House with the spelled incorrectly, it'll still render. So then we'll move on to the next portion. So this is our genre page. What do you specifically like to do when you travel? Do you like seeing art, eating food, enjoying history or nature? So for right now, we'll choose history and nature. And this pretty much preferences your itinerary for what you're going to do. That's my fault, I accidentally logged out there. And as you can also see, ChatGPT persists throughout the building of the itinerary. So if you need to revert back onto something that you've asked it, you can. So on the left here, this is our summary page. It displays everything that you've chosen and all the details of your trip. And then here is our main summary that ChatGPT gives you. So as you can see, the beans in there. We also have the Sydney Opera House, and it also takes into consideration layovers. So we can explore the city of Doha when we have a layover there. And then afterwards, you can view your itinerary. If you don't like it, you can always delete it, or you can recheck the details. If you delete it, it'll ask you, are you sure? Just so you don't have any accidents. And then you can also edit your personal information here. So from here, we'll log out, and then I will pass this over to Sean to talk about the tech stack.
Are there audio issues?
Yeah, I'm not hearing you, Sean.
My apologies. I had the wrong thing selected. Sorry. To continue where we were, for our tech stack, we used a variety of technologies and interwove them to make our application as robust as it is. For our front end, we use React and JavaScript to build a responsive user interface that communicates seamlessly with APIs and delivers dynamic content. Along with that, we used HTML and CSS to make our travel app as modern, interactive, and user-friendly and aesthetic as possible. For our backend, we used Django and Python. We used Django to create a robust, secure backend architecture, along with Python. Among that, being that Django is the REST framework built on Python. And for our infrastructure, we utilize AWS to host and deploy our project using a EC2 instance. And speaking as Kasib said, we Dockerized it and deployed it on AWS with Docker. That's how we utilize that technology. And for our version control and collaboration, we use Git and GitHub to keep track of our changes, our collaboration on our code, managed our branches, and resolved our merge conflicts. And for API testing, we use Postman to verify that our API endpoints were functioning and working as they should. And moving on to our third-party APIs. For our third-party APIs, we used OpenAI. That was our primary and only API to implement our chatbot, as Austin mentioned and showed. And for our Amadeus API, that was used to make and reserve our flights and hotels. And for our avis budget group API, avis API, that we use that to make and reserve our rental cars for our rental car feature. And for Google Maps API, we use that to implement autocomplete. So in case the user mistypes anything, it can take care of it and resolve it and know what the user is trying to find. In addition to that, it also supplies the IATA code to the Amadeus and Avis API, so it gets the proper parameters it's looking for. And now I'm going to pass it over to my teammate Kasib to go over our challenges that we had, mostly with, among other things, third-party APIs.
Thank you, Sean. Yes, the third-party APIs was a significant source of our challenges. These third-party APIs had extensive documentation, and they had their own forms of user authentication to include refresh tokens, meaning we had to maintain the complexity of our Django backends authentication, which also used refresh tokens. So these all had to be these tokens had to be automated in obtaining them. Once we were able to automate the process of securely requesting the tokens for our third-party APIs, the challenge was then cleansing the input to these APIs to eliminate invalid inputs that would in turn crash our app. So Google Maps API became helpful in cleansing the user input. And then the returns just need to be processed in a way that was visually appealing to the user and just made sense so that, you know, when we switch pages, the data could transfer cleanly. So then the flow, really at a high level, then the flow needed to be cleansing the user input, securely making the request to the third-party APIs, then securely sending that to our Django backend, and then retrieving the data once again to make the request to OpenAI to build the trip summary. And so the team coordination in making that happen was also ended up being a challenge because we were merging branches that had so much going on. And so the merge conflicts and the manual testing that occurred upon those merges ended up becoming a challenge. And so that was really just having all those components interact with each other. So moving on to stretch goals, when planning the app, our MVP was just to get the reservations locations for our itinerary and display them on a summary page. Following that, towards the end of the project, our implementation of OpenAI was to have that chatbot assistant and have it help you make suggestions to places that you might want to go at a place that you picked. And the stretch goal that we did not reach was creating an interactive Google Maps widget, which shows how the sites that you picked and the sites that OpenAI picked for you to give you a visual aid next to the trip summary page. And with that, from all of us at Moose Travel, we'd like to thank you for watching our presentation.
All right, thank you very much. Cool. So one question would be, let's see. So, you know, you guys have some experience developing apps. You've gone through the program, did personal projects. Is there anything in particular that was surprising to you as you did the Google project?
Surprising in what kind of way?
Something that you just didn't expect, or an experience, or something you learned, or...
For me personally, handling such complex APIs, for my personal project, it was a little bit more upfront, but then once you start especially with the Amadeus one. That was just something I had never dealt with before. That was very layered. So that was extremely surprising.
I'd say it was what was most surprising and something I wish that I kind of like planned out more was just how just the collaboration on the complexity of those APIs, because we kind of split up and kind of like divided up the APIs. And then when it came to merging and then realizing like some inputs and some outputs weren't working, it took a significant amount of time to resolve. And so that was definitely the most surprising part. And not to mention, because they're so complex, it took a lot to learn each other's coding styles to be able to help troubleshoot.
Cool, interesting. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, guys.